We are a customer-obsessed company, and it is a super important part of having a day one culture. And for our team, so much of what we do is supporting our selling partners and being really obsessed about what is it like to be that small business.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up?
I was about to say check my email, but actually the honest answer these days, the first thing I do is check the time to see should I be awake now? And here in India, we're entirely a marketplace business with only third-party independent sellers in our store. But in most other countries, we both have all these independent sellers as well as a retail business. Our selling partners, they span the gamut from brand new entrepreneurs with an idea who are just getting started, all the way to large multinational global brands that are well known and well recognized.
One thing that you do to practice day one mindset?
It's hard to narrow it down to just one thing. It would probably be impatience. And so I think there's a hunger you have when you have day one. You're hungry to delight your customers. You're hungry to move fast. You're hungry to fix something.
Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Amazon Unplugged. Our guest today is Dharmesh Mehta. Dharmesh joined Amazon in 2013 and is the Vice President for Worldwide Selling Partner Services, or the SPS org. SPS vision is to enable every brand from small business with an idea to the large multinational corporation to be able to thrive and grow into a global selling success. Dharmesh is a graduate of MIT, where he earned his bachelor's in computer science and electrical engineering, and he also did his master's in engineering from MIT. He holds an MBA with a distinction from Harvard Business School. Welcome, Dharmesh, and thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to be here.
This is not the first time in India, but I'm still asking, how's it going so far?
It's great. I try to come here at least once a year, and then after COVID, it's been a little bit, but it's super exciting to be back.
We'll start with talking a little about your journey before Amazon.
Yeah, so I'm originally a computer science, electrical engineering guy. I went to grad school in that, but my career kind of has taken a lot of different turns. I spent time as a software developer working with defense organizations. I had a small startup. We were no more than 7 people building software for school systems. I spent time as a strategy consultant with Bain & Company. I spent some time with Microsoft. But through most of the roles were somewhere at the intersection of product and technology, or sometimes a dose of strategy. And then I had the privilege of joining Amazon back in 2013, so just hit my 10-year anniversary a couple months ago.
Yeah, congratulations. And very diverse background from product to a lot of it is in tech. I'm sure there's a lot of learnings that you've had along the way.
Absolutely, both functional learnings, small company, big company, global companies, local, and so I definitely do love kind of that pace of change and diversity.
Wonderful. And how's your role at Amazon? So what made you come to Amazon?
Yeah, so I joined a little over 10 years ago in what was the seller business back then. I had a team of 4. We worked on some of our marketplace fees, some of the things we provide sellers in terms of tools around promotions, but I had a small product team. And over the 10 years, I've had a variety of different roles, but all in some form or fashion in and around our seller business. And for the last roughly 2 years, I've had the privilege of leading the Selling Partner Services organization.
Could you tell us a little more about Selling Partner Services team, and what does your team do?
So our selling partners, they span the gamut from brand new entrepreneurs with an idea who are just getting started, all the way to large multinational global brands that are well known and well recognized. And our goal is to both create a very trustworthy shopping and selling experience, and to help our selling partners really thrive, to provide them powerful tools that accelerate that growth and really help them thrive. And so we do this in a couple, we talk about 3 big areas. One is our teams are responsible for protecting our store, making a trustworthy both shopping and selling experience that's devoid of any form of fraud, counterfeit, unsafe product, fake reviews, or any other form of abuse. The first big focus for the team. And it's a critical kind of underpinning of just having a trustworthy experience to be able to do anything else. Right. The second big thing we do is we build wonderful, delightful, and very powerful experiences for our selling partners. And here in India, we're entirely a marketplace business with only third-party independent sellers in their store. But in most other countries, we both have all these independent sellers as well as a retail business. And so we build and kind of drive the experience for both our sellers and our vendors globally. The third thing is being responsible for the actual business and the P&L. And that's both driving the inputs and making sure they're leading to the right outputs for the seller business globally.
That sounds very exciting, and I'd love to get some more insights to it as we go along.
Absolutely. It's certainly exciting, it's fast changing, and to my previous comments, there's a ton of diversity and it's constantly changing.
So Dharmesh, at Amazon, we are known to keep the customers at the center of everything that we do. Does your team enable that balance between the customer and the sellers and making sure that you're prioritizing both?
Yeah, well, there's two ways I might answer that question. The first is we are a customer-obsessed company. It's a leadership principle. It's our first leadership principle, and it is a super important part of having a day one culture. And for many teams that work on building amazing experiences for the shopping customer, they often find that very relatable because almost all of us, if not all of us, shop on Amazon. And so we know what it's like to be a customer. We have lots of friends and family and colleagues and other people we know who are shoppers on Amazon and give us rich feedback and their stories. For our team, so much of what we do is supporting our selling partners and being really obsessed about what is it like to be that small business who's got, maybe is an entrepreneur on their own or maybe has, two other employees that they're, and they're a small business and they're struggling to have the capital and the, space and the warehousing and how do they find the right products and how do they manage cash flow and to really get into their shoes and, understand what it's like and really be obsessed over delighting those is harder and it takes more work because, many of our team members have never been a small business trying to sell on Amazon. And so, we spend a lot of time on how do we make sure we're being customer obsessed for our selling partners. How do we walk in their shoes? How do we listen to their voices? How do we visit them? How do we talk to them? How do we spend time in our tools really understanding what it's like? But second, to what you were asking, this balance, the delightful thing is that we only succeed if our selling partners succeed. And so the joy of building for all these amazing entrepreneurs and these small, medium-sized businesses, they're also interested in creating long-term successful businesses. They're interested in delighting customers, providing great products, great service after the fact. And so most of the time, you can have these wonderful things that are great for the buying customer, the shopper in our store, and that are wonderful for people who are trying to sell those products, and that connection is a win-win and win for Amazon as well. Now, sometimes those can be in tension. We do have a very high bar for the customer experience, and that does take work for our selling partners to hit that bar. We do charge fees for the services we provide, and obviously that costs something for our selling partners. We got to make sure it's a great value. So we're constantly looking to make sure we have the right balance between these, but the vast majority of the time, if we're really being innovative, we're really pushing ourselves, we can fight in these great wins that are wins for the buying customer and for our selling partners.
We'll shift gears a bit and we'll move to a little about personal leadership style and get some more insights. If you have a new team member or a new Amazonian joining on the team, what will be your advice?
First is if you're new to Amazon, spend time really trying to learn our leadership principles and about our kind of day one culture. And it's not important just for new people. I think culture is something you have to work at forever. But I think for new folks, obviously we hired these people because we think they're amazing at something. We think they're going to raise the bar in some area, whether it's a functional skill, leadership area, whatever it may be. But for them to be successful at Amazon, they're going to have to figure out how to also excel at our leadership principles and our culture and then continue to make it better. I always tell folks is to be a sponge. I think, we hire very driven people who are motivated. We have many people, and you want to deliver, you want to go have impact, you want to go get something, and of course you do, but take some time to really be a sponge and learn, not just about kind of leadership and culture, but learn about your team, learn about your customer, learn about how things get done. Understand the data. If you're an engineer, understand your systems and your different services and how they operate. If you're an operations leader, understand how you manage different teams and what the priorities are and what the big goals are. So those are probably the two things I most commonly tell new folks on the team.
Wonderful. And it reminds me, I think when I joined, I asked some of the leaders that I was meeting. One of the leaders said, when you want to do anything new, it's best to look around and ask a little more, because if it is very obvious or what seems is why we don't do it, most likely some of it is already happening in the organization somewhere. There is a strong reason of why probably that hasn't worked, so that needs a fresh eye. So I think said, look around, you would find some of it existing within some of the organizations because Amazon is just so huge, and sometimes we may not be able to get that information right up front. But yeah, if you spend some time learning about what are some of the other teams doing, you will encounter there are some innovative solutions for some of the similar looking problems that are already existing.
Yeah.
So learn and be curious becomes like really important at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of that really resonates, which is probably someone has thought about it.
Yes.
Maybe they're working on it. But I also tell folks, you're bringing a fresh perspective. Sometimes we've thought about these, but it's been 5 years and the situation's changed. It's also a good reminder for folks like me that have been around 10 plus years. I do want people to bring things up, and I want to be careful that I don't hang on to biases that I have that might have changed because the environment's changed. And so there's a good, both learn and be curious, but then feel very comfortable introducing new ideas and new perspectives.
You spoke about day one mentality, and I think there is one thing that you do to practice day one mindset.
It's hard to narrow it down to just one thing, but if there is one thing, it's probably, if I were trying to put it in a word, it would probably be impatience.
Okay.
And so I think there's like a hunger you have when you have day one. You're hungry to delight your customers. You're hungry to move fast. You're hungry to fix something. I mean, you have an impatience because you always want more. And you have to be careful. Impatience is not being critical of something. It's not being mad at someone. It's not something that exists. But it is being impatient for the next thing and wanting to get there fast and wanting to figure out how to do that and really figure out how to delight customers. So that's probably the one, if I had to pick just one, that would be my one.
Do you have any leadership style or any personal way of leading?
I feel like that's a question you should be asking my team. I think what they would tell you, you might hear the word impatient. You might hear, Dharmesh has a high bar for kind of what he expects. If you think about what we're trying to do, on one end, we are trying to support a bunch of small businesses' livelihood, and the bar for getting that right is super important. On another end, we're trying to prevent fraud and abuse and counterfeits, and when that's wrong, that's a pretty severe thing. And so I think you'd probably hear that I have a high bar. Hopefully you'd hear that I'm an easy to approach and empathetic leader. I try to act just like anyone else on the team, and I'm a member of this team just like everyone else is a member of this team, and we've got a common mission. We may play different roles in trying to achieve that mission, but we're really part of one team. So hopefully that's a little bit of what you'd hear, but I encourage you to talk to others.
I will, surely. Thank you. Talk about all of this scale and complexity and knowing how Amazon drives innovation in everything that we do. From your team perspective, how do you look at innovation, and what are some of the ways in which you're looking at some of this new age technology to solve for these complex problems?
Yeah, and it's interesting, Gen AI is, all the rage, and everyone's talking about Gen AI. It's interesting for our team. We've had machine learning has been a focus for us for decades. It's been at the heart of so much of what we do, all the way from how we prevent fraud and abuse to how we personalize your experience, to how we optimize our logistics and fulfillment. And so when we think about innovation, there's innovation everywhere. As an example, just in, picking on the Gen AI side, for people who are trying to sell in our store, as we were talking about earlier, we have a high bar for the customer experience. Yeah. And so it means we want these very rich product detail pages that have, very high quality images. We want perfect titles and descriptions. We want all these attributes and pieces of data that will help the shopper easier time deciding if they want a product. Well, that sounds wonderful for the customer. For this small business, it's a lot of work to have to, do those photo shoots and generate all this text and catalog data. And so one of the things we launched recently was using generative AI to help these small and medium-sized businesses create these product listings. And so, we started with, just give us a short description, and then we would try and generate a bunch of this information. And then we said, hey, just grab a quick image of a product. It's probably sitting in your factory or wherever, in your warehouse or in your shop. Just take a quick image of it and take a snap and upload it. And then we take that and entirely generate a title and a description, and we go, here's the color and what we think the size is, and we present that to the seller, and now they just got to verify, hey, are all those accurate, make a couple of tweaks. And what we took what used to be this long process of generating all that themselves to now just a small bit of editing, if any, and then submit. And so That's one example, but there's innovation all over the place. We have, as we were talking about earlier, one of the powerful services we provide for sellers is around fulfillment and logistics.
Yeah.
And so, we're trying to manage how do we have the right product in all the right places at the right inventory levels so it's not too much and someone, has to liquidate product, but it's not too little so that, we run out. And not just having the right inventory level, but in the right places. So when the customer shops, we can get it to them, super fast. And, we used to talk about prime delivery being 2 days and then it was 1 day, and now increasingly it's the same day. And you get it so fast, but that's, heavy work in predictive analytics and supply chain optimization to go and say, how much inventory do we need and how do we put it in the right places? Recently we've made dramatic changes to the different fees that sellers can pay us based on their inventory levels and where they send the product to, that are all based on, all of this very powerful analytics on how do we have the right inventory levels in the right places. And maybe the last one, just to show the diversity of kind of the innovation that goes on the team. We've had a lot of work on in our store on how do we prevent payment fraud, identity theft, counterfeit, unsafe products over a long, long time. And for many years, we focused really on how do we make sure Amazon is a super trusted store for the shoppers and for sellers. And then more recently, we've realized, just as we've gotten quite good at many of these things, that we can actually help the entire industry move forward. And so we've started to put together what we've called as blueprints for how the private sector and the public sector can work better together to protect consumers. And so, we started with counterfeits, then fake reviews, and earlier this year, we just a couple months ago, we put out a blueprint for how to ensure safe products. And a lot of the regulations that were created, a lot of how industry works together, is still pretty antiquated. And we go, here's how we create better standards and better recall processes and better regulations that really will protect consumers much more effectively across the entire industry. And so, we look at innovation just in everything we do. It's a constant.
Every seller is unique, like every customer is unique, right? They have their own expectations of what they want to do. And there's so many variables around it. I think it's difficult to even imagine the amount of work that goes in to create those, scalable, sustainable structures that gives them the right tools and enables them from tech to the right knowledge. I think it's just a lot of variables to manage.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We have millions of sellers all around the world, and they really do span that gamut. And it's been interesting being here in India, and I spent a bunch of time with sellers here too, even just this week. And if you go to the US and you talk to some of our largest sellers, they increasingly are primarily brand owners now. They've invented their own brands, and that's really they have a small number of brands, they've got a relatively small catalog, and they're trying to drive success of that brand. You come to a place like India, some of the largest sellers here in India are actually large resellers or distributors, often of already very well-known brands. And that's still a very large part of the business.
You spoke about, leading a very large multicultural team, tens and thousands of Amazonians. I would like to know a little more about what's your approach to leading such large, diverse teams, which is spread across different countries, and what are some of the unique challenges that you navigate on a day-to-day?
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember when I started at Amazon, I had a team of 4 people, and we could have sat around a table not much bigger than this, and I would know everyone. I would know their friends and family. I would know what's going on in their personal lives. It also meant, from a work perspective, I knew each person. I knew what they were working on. I knew what they were great at. I knew the areas they were working to grow, and you could do that. And we talk a lot about, as you go to scale, whether it's in what directly reports to you or just scale your influence and impact. A huge part of that is learning how to lead, kind of beyond your line of sight. Our team now, we have more than 40,000 people on the team, and so I don't know most of these people personally. I don't see them every day. And so you have to find lots of ways to go and say, hey, how do you lead beyond your line of sight? And one of the powerful things at Amazon is we do have these leadership principles. We have kind of this focus on day one culture that's universal. It doesn't matter what level you are, what country you're in, what functional role you're in. These leadership principles go across. And so that, things like that help. I think a lot about what are the scalable mechanisms or metrics we use to be able to audit. But then you also have to allow a certain level of freedom. In an org of this size or this diversity, you don't want it all to be the same. You are going to have different ways that different teams operate and still share the same leadership principles, the same culture, They may have similar goals or metrics that we're trying to drive in different parts of the world, but you want to allow people to experiment and innovate and come up with different ways of doing things, because that's how we're going to learn and continue to get better.
I'm going to actually steal that phrase, how do you lead beyond the line of sight?
Beyond your line of sight.
I love that phrase.
Yeah, it's super important because I think for many people, somewhere in their career, even if you don't have a large team, you are going to be influencing someone that you may not know as well, you may not see every day. Maybe some partner may not even be an employee within the same company. You got to figure out, how do you lead? How do you drive impact? How do you do that faster and better, even when you don't intimately know everything going on?
And I know we are in India, and again, I want to ask you something very specific to India.
Absolutely.
Is what role does the India team play in the success of the SPS org?
Well, India plays a huge role. For SPS specifically, we have large teams here in many different functions. And so, we have engineering and product teams here. We have large operations teams. A bunch of our support associates, our investigators are here. We have a wide range of roles just within our team. But more broadly, Amazon India is a huge part of driving the SPS team's success. One, there's Amazon India, and just everyone who works on Amazon.in.
Yeah.
That is entirely a seller business, and we jointly work together on lots of things. And that sometimes is things that we're building, globally that help Amazon.in be successful, and then sometimes it's the innovations that come from the Amazon.in team that we'll go take to other countries or maybe even scale globally that can help us with our selling partners everywhere. Mm-hmm. There's a large operations team here that's responsible for all these sellers' products and getting them to customers every day. Yeah. There's AWS teams here that provide some of the services. We run some of our services in the Hyde region that AWS has here. They've got a data center region here. And so There's so many different teams, even Prime Video and Mini TV. A lot of the value proposition for Prime is quite rich in terms of the services that it now offers. What started as really a shipping benefit has now got shipping and video and so many other things. The team here in India, it's exciting. We were just talking about the other day, Amazon has had employees in India for now just 20 years. And what started with, I think it was 4 people 20 years ago. And then 10 years ago, we launched Amazon.in. And now in India, Amazon has more than 100,000 employees. So, 1 lakh employees is a pretty impressive number to hit.
I don't know if during this visit or in your previous visits, if there was anything that you said, hey, I want to take this back to my global team and scale up, or just,
Absolutely. That happens all the time. And sometimes it's about culture and how people run things. Sometimes it's the passion they have for folks. I had the privilege yesterday of being part of the All India meeting that we had here, and there were multiple things and how that was run and the excitement there that I look forward to bringing back to some of our all team meetings in the US.
I think one thing that I've always heard is the energy that they experience, whoever comes to the India team, and the energy that they experience, they want to just bottle that up and see if we can get that energy back in
Absolutely.
Some of their teams as well.
It's fun. Even walking around Hyde 13 here, which is Amazon's biggest building, or biggest campus. It's so, on one hand, the building feels so familiar. You walk in and you go, this is an Amazon building.
Yeah.
I just know it instantly. But on the other hand, I look at some of the energy that's there and the way that's been designed to facilitate collaboration and the energy people and the passion people have for their customers. It's super motivating and inspiring.
There are 1.4 million sellers on Amazon.in, of which about 125,000 sellers are actually exporting their products globally. How do you see that evolving over the next few months or years?
Yeah, and it's fascinating, as someone who actually, while I'm here in India, I'm going to do a bunch of shopping of products that I can't get living in the US. And it's just the vast selection. You can go to any country. You can go to Vietnam, you can go to the US, you can go to Europe, and there's so many amazing sellers that have wonderful products they've invented. And one of the powerful things we can do, we feel very lucky to be able to do, is to help these sellers not only be successful here, but to be able to export to other places. And so, just here in India, sellers have already, since we started Amazon.in and a bunch of our global stores, have already exported over $8 billion worth of products.
Wow.
And internally, not a lot of people know, but we have a goal that we've talked about. That is, we want to help these small businesses and export more than $20 billion worth of products by the end of 2025. And so that's kind of the goal we're going after. And it's awesome because you take that small business owner anywhere in the world, and you imagine what it's like to be a small business owner, to set up a shop, and you can reach some set of people that can travel in and be able to come to your store. And then in many countries, you can find some way, maybe across your state or across the entire country, to figure out some of the logistics. It's hard to figure out logistics, to figure out transportation, how to make it reliable. But that's another powerful thing we try and do for all of our selling partners, is provide amazing fulfillment and logistics services to help them take their products across borders and figure out tariffs and customs, product compliance in different countries. And then you take that, the reason this is so powerful is you took a small business that might only be able to reach potential customers within a couple kilometers or maybe 10, 20 kilometers of where they are. And now, through selling on Amazon, they can reach people all over the world. Actually, sellers in India already sell to customers in more than 200 countries.
Wow.
So it's super exciting.
I remember there was a time when, a few years back, whenever I'd travel, especially if it is US, my friends and relatives, they would specifically tell me, if you're traveling, could you get this as well?
Totally.
I think all of that has come down drastically because of the fact that there are more sellers who are able to ship their products globally with much more ease. So
I've been joking around with some of the team that came with me from Seattle. I'm like, I have a shopping list for my wife, and they all were laughing a little bit. But internally, I know that shopping list is so much shorter than it used to be. Just a small number of years ago, because we are helping sellers all over the world be able to reach customers everywhere.
It's wonderful to learn, and I think there's a ton of knowledge that I am taking away listening on how using technology, using Gen AI, and some of the way you explained it, so simple to say, hey, sellers can use those pre-generated images to be able to create their inventory and all of that. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
You spoke about preventing fraud and counterfeit, and I know specifically, and I'm again pivoting on India. India has been very traditional, in terms of the way they would shop, the way they would want to feel and see a product, and their confidence on what comes, from an online mode. And over the years, of course, there's been a ton of work that has happened to build that confidence. But at the same time, one of the most critical element is preventing fraud, preventing counterfeit. And some of those sentiments, it only helps our customer if they see that there is credible work that's happening. So really good to see some of the work that's happening in that space as well.
Yeah, and it's an area we've worked on for many years, and it's a hard thing to talk about because no one goes and says, hey, I shopped on Amazon and I got a genuine product, and they go and tell all their friends and family, right? The thing someone talks about is when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And so we've had to, it's a tricky thing to educate folks on just how seriously we take this. But we just shared that in 2023, our team had more than 15,000 people around the world we spent more than $1.2 billion just in 2023 on preventing fraud, counterfeit, and other forms of abuse. And the biggest chunk of that investment is really in a bunch of very advanced machine learning and predictive technology that proactively prevents any of these things before they ever happen. And we do that both ourselves in terms of the verification we can do, all the different signals we have, the data we capture, but also in different areas, like in counterfeiting, we partner with brands. We build really leading brand protection tools so that we can work together and leverage the knowledge they have of their products, the knowledge we have of what's going on in our store. And so we partner with a bunch of folks as well, but all of that in the vein of how do we proactively prevent this? And then on top of that, we do have hey, anytime we miss something, we know we're not perfect. We think we're quite good at many of these areas, but we're not perfect. And we're going to keep investing in this area, keep learning. Anytime we get something wrong, how do we remedy that specific customer situation? And then how do we learn from it so that same thing never happens again? And so, with customers, one of the ways we try and educate them that they can trust in shopping on Amazon is not just through their shopping experience and every time they shop, but we also have things like our A to Z guarantee that if anything ever goes wrong, If you're ever not satisfied with the condition of the product, you think the quality wasn't right, you think something was wrong with it, you were not happy with the timely delivery of that product, whatever it may be, Amazon guarantees that we will always refund you even though you may have bought it from some independent seller.
Looking ahead, what are some of the challenges and the opportunities you and your teams are, very excited about in this year and the next? So what are some of those things that you're really excited about?
Most challenges are opportunities in some sense. And it's against a backdrop. It's interesting to think about where the retail industry has evolved over, I remember growing up as a kid, you didn't feel like the retail industry was actually innovating that much, back when I was a kid at least. And but I look at now and I go, the entire industry, it's not just Amazon, but a bunch of our competitors, it's probably the most competitive time we've ever had in the retail industry. And that's exciting. That's great for the customer, whether it's a buying customer or our selling partners. It forces everyone to up their game. And so for us, there's innovation and kind of new opportunity in lots of areas. Obviously there's lots of investment in generative AI, not just earlier we talked about kind of enlisting, but in all sorts of tools we provide sellers and the way we support them, the way we provide growth advice. There's all sorts of new capabilities we're working on there, as well as in a lot of the things we do for fraud and abuse prevention, where these large models, whether they're language models or image or other kind of approaches, even if they're not generative, these large models have kind of massive opportunity for us. There's a lot of work we're still doing on supply chain, and so more than 10 years we've had fulfillment by Amazon, which if you think about it, really starts from somewhere in the middle of a brand owner supply chain. For a brand owner, the supply chain begins with manufacturing, and then for manufacturing, they've often got whether it's ocean or domestic logistics to then go warehouse a product, and then from warehousing you get to the fulfillment piece, which is where we play a role today in a big way with fulfillment by Amazon and helping a bunch of our selling partners place their product very close to customers so that when an order comes in, we can pick, pack, ship, and handle returns if they happen. But for these selling partners, and the many of them that are brand owners, all the work we can do around supply chain, about a year ago, actually less than a year ago, about 6 months ago, we announced Supply Chain by Amazon, and really huge investments we're making in global and domestic logistics, warehousing, bulk warehousing, multi-channel distribution, so that for these brand owners, of course we love that they sell on Amazon, but they also sell in many other channels. They sell in their own physical stores. And how do we help provide that supply chain and logistics across all of it? Do it faster, more reliably, and at a better value than they can find anywhere. There's a lot we're doing in continuing to make our selling partner experience not just highly effective in driving the business, but also something that sellers love, where they go, Amazon is a trusted partner, someone I enjoy working with, someone who's got my back, and who provides delightful experiences, and there's lots of innovation going on in that realm as well.
We've reached the last segment, and this one is a little more fun, a little more rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I would like you to answer without putting in a lot of thought, to say what's the first thing that comes to your mind, with that. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, here we go.
All
Try
right.
not to think too much.
So if you're not doing what you're doing currently, what would you be doing?
That's funny. Someone recently asked me, they go, hey, if you could have any job which you could have, what would you want? And I go, I'd want my job. So I'm going to assume I'm not working. If I'm not working, I'd probably be traveling the world. I've had the privilege to get to over 30 countries so far.
Wow.
And my wife and I both love to travel. I think we'd be traveling the world.
What never fails to make you laugh?
Beyond that question, probably my kids. There's still, we have 3 kids between ages 7 and 13, and there's still just like an innocence to what kids say sometimes or do sometimes that just cracks me up.
Right. Okay, that's nice. What's the first thing you do when you wake up?
I was about to say check my email, but actually the honest answer these days, the first thing I do is check the time to see like, should I be awake now? And
Yeah, actually, I forgot to ask you how are you doing on the time zone difference and.
oh yeah, I traveled a lot as a little kid, and so jet lag doesn't hit me so hard, so I'm good on that.
Okay, wonderful.
But I have to check the time.
Okay. What's your favorite way to relax after a long day?
Probably maybe 1 or 2 things. Most days I leave work and then I completely get off email and everything. I spend time with my wife and then a good bit with the kids. And it's whether it's like helping with homework or reading or like arts and crafts with our little one. Just that time with kids it's completely disconnected from work, and it's a good way for me to relax. Or sometimes if the kids aren't around, just sitting down, having a glass of wine, maybe watching a movie or something like that.
Any new skill or a hobby that you've picked up lately?
Actually, one of my kids has recently gotten into doing crossword puzzles. I've kind of joined him. I think many decades ago I used to do crossword puzzles, but I've gotten back into that, and it's surprisingly a lot of fun.
Okay, wonderful. And I thought you're already solving a lot of problems, and then you have
Yeah.
a puzzle to solve. as
Work
well.
wasn't enough, so I figured I needed more problems. I
Well-
love the puzzles.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dharmesh. It was absolutely amazing to talk to you. I think I learned a lot about what the SPS organization is doing in terms of enabling all the sellers across, and the innovation that's your team is driving, some of the stuff that you spoke about in terms of how Gen AI is being used to be able to enable all of the sellers. I think that was really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Absolutely, super happy to be here.
With that, since you answered all of the questions and you did really well, we have a small hamper for you. And this is actually from one of our Amazon sellers, which is on Amazon.in, and it's called Eat Anytime.
Well, thank you very much. Eat anytime.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dharmesh. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. So happy to be here.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I love speaking to Dharmesh about what are some of the things that is driving SPS and this organization, and what are some of the problems that they're trying to solve. And we would love to hear your comments about what you learned particularly from this episode. I hope you also know that you can now listen to Amazon Unplugged podcast at Amazon Music, Apple, Spotify, and any other mediums that you listen to your podcast on.